Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivara Radhe Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivara Radhe Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivara Radhe Gopi Jana Ballabha Jasodanandana Brajacanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajacanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachadi Jamunatira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jayo Vishnupat Paramahamsa Harivajagacharya Astatharasatasi Simad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrind Ki Nityananda Mahamahotsava Ki Gaura Premanandi. We're celebrating Nityananda's appearance day. One new family yesterday evening, I asked the two boys, what do you know about Nityananda? And he said, he's Balaram. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna. Just as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in this world to experience on the internal side of his purpose of appearance, the love that Radha has for Krishna and the happiness that Radha feels in her love for Krishna and the qualities in Krishna that she is most attracted by. So Balaram appeared also as Lord Nityananda to assist Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, both the external and internal. Now, we don't hear so much about the internal mood of Lord Nityananda, but we certainly hear of his assist. The Panchatattva in Sridham Mayapur features Lord Chaitanya in the center, to his right and to our left, Lord Nityananda, who is Nityananda Ram or Balaram, and to his right or our left is Advaita Charya. These three lords are all in the Vishnu Tattva category. And to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's left or our right, that's Gadadhar in the Shakti Tattva category. And to our far right, or to Gadadhar's left, is Shivas, who's Narada Muni, or Jiva Tattva, serving the Supreme Lord, Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So these are the five features, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the center, the Lord and his five features, all assisting in the Sankirtan pastimes, along with many, many, many other associates. Here's a close-up photograph of Lord Nityananda with his left arm gesturing towards the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. In Vrindavan, the celebrated Gaur-Nitai deities, and a close-up of Lord Nityananda and the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. So as already mentioned, these two lords, they're Krishna and Balaram. Brajendra Nandana ye Sachi Sutta Hoilo se Balaram Hoilo Nitai. Krishna has come as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the son of Mother Sachi, and Balaram has come as Lord Nityananda. Another nice photograph illustrating the same. So we find in Chaitanya Charitamrita the description of each of the Panchatattva members, and there's several verses describing Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Here's a very famous verse. I can say there's a devotee, a god brother. We would regularly go on book distribution together, and before we would begin our distribution of books, we would recite these two verses, the Sanskrit and then the English. So to me, they're very personal, very meaningful. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanandao Sahodito Goda Daye Pushpabantao Chitrao Sandao Tamo Nudao. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Shri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and the moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Goda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance, and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all, manifesting the Sankirtan movement, these two lords, the sun and the moon, rising together. And a few verses later, may Sri Nityananda Ram be the object of my constant remembrance, Sankharshan Sheshanag, and the Vishnus who lie on the Karana, Garbha, and ocean of milk are his plenary portions, and the portions of his plenary portions. So these are expansions of Balaram. And the first is Sankharshan, as we know, the name-giving ceremony for Krishna by Gargamuni. And Balaram's name was given Sankharshan. And Sheshanag and the three Purusha avatars. These are all portions of his plenary portions, or plenary portions. So Mahavishnu, this is Advaitacharya, that is, he's an expansion of Nityanandaram. Next, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, I surrender to the lotus feet of Sri Nityanandaram, who is known as Sankharshan, in the midst of the Chaturvyuha, consisting of Vasudev, Sankharshan, Pradumna, and Aniruddha. He possesses full opulences and resides in Vaikuntha Loka, far beyond the material creation. The celebrated illustration of Lord Chaitanya's feet, Lord Nityananda's feet, and the markings on his feet. We'll see this image several times because his lotus feet are very special. So this is the first Sankharshan in the Vaikuntha realm. Then I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Rama, whose partial representation, called Karana Dakshayi Vishnu, lying on the Karana ocean, is the original Purusha, the master of the illusory energy and the shelter of all the universes. Then I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, a partial part of whom is Garbhodakshai Vishnu. From the navel of Garbhodakshai Vishnu sprouts the lotus that is the birthplace of Brahma, the engineer of the universe. The stem of that lotus is the resting place of the multitude of planets. Now remember, each of these Purusha avatars and the Sankharshan of the Vaikuntha realm, these are his expansions. So when we're speaking of Nityananda, these are expansions or portions of a plenary portions of him. So how powerful and how transcendental is Nityananda Ram. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose secondary part is the Vishnu lying in the ocean of milk. That Kshirodakshai Vishnu is the supersoul of all living entities and the maintainer of all the universes. Sheshanag is his further subpart. As there's 5 features, Lord Chaitanya and 5 features, there's 5 expansions and sub-expansions of Nityananda Ram. And we're celebrating his appearance day. He appeared in Ekachakra. When you visit Ekachakra, you'll see this archway. On one side is the birthplace of Nityananda, and the other side is where his son, Virabhadra, resided, and his extended family. The actual place of Lord Nityananda's birth is this Gabhir Vas, it's called. It marks the place where he was born as the son of Padmavati, his mother, and Hadai Pandit, or Hadai Oja, known locally as Hadai Pandit. And as we're facing this birthplace or birth site, to the left, down a little ways, is the temple, and the main deity in the center of that temple is a deity of Lord Nityananda. And to another side of that main altar is the 3 lords, with Lord Chaitanya on our far right. In the center is Lord Nityananda, and to his right, or to our left, is Advaita Charya. Now notice the style of the deity, because we'll see a few photos of that deity of Lord Nityananda. Notice how the garments are spread. And here's another of the same set of deities. Lord Nityananda was born 12 years before the birth of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They're called brothers because they're transcendental brothers. They're brothers in the spiritual sense, not that they had the same parents. And in Ekachakra, it was something like Navadvip in that it was a seat of high learning. There are many, many, many elevated brahmanas, and particularly they were very strong worshippers of Vishnu. And leader amongst them all, most exalted, was Hadai Oja or Hadai Pandit. And when they had their son that was born, Nitai, he exhibited pastimes. We read some of them just this morning from Chaitanya Bhagavat with his young classmates and friends, even before they were attending school. All day long, they would engage in enacting pastimes of Krishna and Ram. Here we see a drawing with he's holding a bow. And behind, he was always Lakshman in the drama, and Lord Ramachandra behind him. And these other boys, young boys, they were taking various roles in drama. So in other words, Nitai he was the script writer, and he was the director, and he was the main actor, and they had costumes, and they would make their costumes from anything, and enact pastimes all day long, different pastimes. Because this is a long presentation, I'm not going to repeat some of those wonderful childhood pastimes that he performed with his friends, but it's just amazing. So much so, the parents would hear from their sons what they were doing all day long, and they were just amazed. Where has this boy learned all these pastimes? He hadn't even gone to school yet. And when they asked him, he just smiled and said, "These are my pastimes." So thinking it's just child's talk, they smiled and had their sons continue. There's a very nice description. One time there was a tributary of the Jamuna River running near their home. And in that tributary, one day he found a deity of Krishna. And he loved that deity of Krishna very much. And the deity of Krishna loved him very much. And he was known as Banka Rai, or the crooked Krishna. And after his childhood pastimes were nearly coming to a conclusion, one Brahmin, Sannyasi, came to Ekachakra. And when that Brahmin Sannyasi came, he was naturally hosted by Hadai Pandit to take his meal and to take his residence. And together, because they're both very learned in the scriptures, they spent all day long and into the night and all night long discussing transcendental topics about Krishna. And in the course of that time, Nitai was hearing and serving his father and the sannyasi. And the sannyasi, in the following morning, it was time to continue his journey. He made a request of Hadai Pandit, "Please let your son come with me. I need an assistant. I'm becoming a little older now. And I'll train him and take care of him and teach him and everything." So it was a shock. In detail, it's described that Hadai Pandit and Padmavati were unable to bear separation from him, much like Yasoda and Nanda could not bear separation from Krishna, but it so happened that way. Nitai went with the Brahmana, and walking, the description is just like you see those two people walking down the road. Hadai Pandit and Padmavati stood staring off in the distance until they just disappeared and fainted. And it's really heart-rending description. They couldn't eat, they couldn't sleep, they couldn't live. They went on for as long as their life would carry on, and they eventually gave up their life out of separation from Nitai. In the course of travels, a question came up this morning. In the course of travels, it doesn't further mention whether Lord Nityananda was still with the sannyasi traveling or had gone his own separate way, whatever. They visited holy places, details of the places. And one of the places that was visited was Pandharpur. And Lord Nityananda wanted to purposefully, for Leela purposes, he wanted to remain incognito or quiet, not observed by others. So he stayed at the home of one Brahmin for some days. While he was there, Lakshmi also came to the same home because he had visited this Brahmin many times. And he spoke to the Brahmin saying, "There's something different today. I've been to your home many times, but I have this sense there's a great personality somewhere in your home or near your home. Is that so? And the Brahmana then produced Lord Nityananda, and the two, Lakshmi Pati Tirtha and Nityananda, immediately felt ecstasy. And in course of time, while staying with the Brahmana in his home, Lakshmi Pati Tirtha gave Diksha to Nityananda. Later, in the same, this is a book, what I'm describing now is from a book, Nityananda Charitamrita, which was written by Vrindavan Das Thakur. A little background. Vrindavan Das Thakur wrote two books, one about Lord Chaitanya and one about Lord Nityananda. He was a disciple of Lord Nityananda, Vrindavan Das, and they both were called Charinamrita, so Chaitanya Charitamrita. But the Chaitanya Charitamrita got renamed Chaitanya Bhagavat by the Vaishnava community, not by Vrindavan Das, because they understood him to be the Vyasa, as Vyasadeva was the author or compiler of Srimad Bhagavatam, pastimes of Krishna. Vrindavan Das was the compiler of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. It was the first biography of Lord Chaitanya's life, so they called it Chaitanya Bhagavat. And later Krishna Das Kaviraj wrote Chaitanya Charitamrita. After spending time with Lakshmi Pati Tirtha, he traveled to a place where Madhavendra Puri was. The two personalities associated together, they were god brothers, and both great manifestors of ecstatic love for Krishna, who can describe the time they spent together. Lord Nityananda continued in his visiting to holy places, identical with what Balaram did during Krishna's pastimes, visiting holy places. One of the places he spent the greatest amount of time in was Vrindavan. He visited and then continued travel, and he came back to Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, not far from the Radha Damodar temple, by the shore of the Jamuna River, is a place, Sringaravat, or Nityanandavat. And you see that little structure in the center of the photograph. It said that's where Lord Nityananda would sit and chant and absorb himself in feelings of separation from Krishna, and even more specifically, feelings of separation from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because the two lords are omniscient, and Lord Nityananda knew that, because earlier, in the earlier portion of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, he was hiding his quality as a devotee and was manifesting qualities of a super scholar. So he was biding his time in Vrindavan. And one of the places that Lord Nityananda stayed, in addition, was here at Radhakund. And when you visit Radhakund, if Krishna permits, we'll be conducting a yatra in Vrindavan, and one of the places we'll visit, of course, is Govardhan, and one of the places at Govardhan, maybe a special day dedicated to Radhakund. And we'll see, as you see in this photo, the sitting place of Lord Nityananda. Notice the photograph that's in the sitting place is the very deity of Lord Nityananda at Ekachakra. When Lord Nityananda understood that Lord Chaitanya was now performing his pastimes as a devotee, he traveled from Vrindavan to Mayapur. It's a long journey. And the two lords met in a very wonderful way. We described it a little bit yesterday evening. The day before Lord Nityananda arrived in Mayapur, Lord Chaitanya called all the devotees together and said, "Last night I had a dream." And he described in the dream, decorated, majestic personality came to Navadvip. And I have the sense from that dream that a great personality has reached Navadvip. So he sent devotees searching all of Navadvip to find him. And they came back in the evening empty-handed. They couldn't find him anywhere. Lord Chaitanya smiled and said, "I think I know where he is." And together they went to the house of Nandanacharya. Very beautiful pastime when you visit the house of Nandanacharya in Mayapur. The two lords are meeting at the house of Nandanacharya. And Lord Chaitanya called out loudly. Lord Nityananda came, and ecstatically they embraced. And immediately a big festival was held. And in this big festival, kirtan and ecstatic chanting and dancing took place. The very next day, Lord Chaitanya ordered that a Vyasa Puja should be performed. And in that Vyasa Puja, he wanted Lord Nityananda to be worshipped because, after all, Balaram is the original spiritual master, and Lord Nityananda is a manifestation of Balaram. He wanted everyone to understand not just me, but Lord Nityananda. That is, not just the Supreme Lord, but the one who is the spiritual master on behalf of the Supreme Lord is to be honored in this way. A very wonderful celebration, very detailed description found in Chaitanya Bhagavat. After some time, Lord Chaitanya wanted to engage on pastime, so he spoke with him like this. "Listen, listen, Nityananda. Listen, Haridas. Make my command known everywhere. Go from house to house and beg from all the residents, please, to follow Krishna's instructions. Do not speak or cause anyone to speak anything other than this." Of course, that's all Nityananda Prabhu needed. It was an instruction. And Nityananda and Haridas went out each day in the morning and came back in the evening and gave reports to Lord. But it was a little difficult for Haridas because Nityananda was a little unconventional. He was an avaduta and didn't have any regard for social custom or worldly standards. He just spontaneously exhibited love of God in various amazing, funny ways. He jumped in the Ganges, and people thought he was going to drown, and then they saw alligators, and they called out, and he was just splashing the alligators and carrying on like a madman. And then he would come to the shore of the Ganga and take the garments of the Brahmins who were bathing, and their cloth was there drying, and he would steal their garments. And they'd complain to Haridas, this, control this person. He's your associate. I don't have any control of him. He's a wild man. And Haridas complained to Lord Chaitanya, "Let me go alone. I don't want to go with him anymore." Lord Chaitanya calmed them down, and they continued. Prabhus, Haridas, and Nityananda saw in the marketplace, one of the marketplaces, the two drunkards, formerly born in Brahmin families, detailed description. The description says there's no sinful activity they didn't perform. They had become completely fallen and rotten and wild and drunk and womanizers. And but Nityananda considered, wonderful. If these two can be saved, everyone was afraid of them, but if these two can be saved by Lord Chaitanya, then everyone will come to know of his greatness. So immediately he approached them and begged them, please chant the holy name. And they were so drunk, they didn't know what they were doing. They took the clay pot and hit Nityananda in the head. And it drew blood. And Nityananda wasn't fazed at all. He said, never mind. Just chant the holy name of the Lord. And Lord Chaitanya came to know, because he's omniscient, and he came with his Sudarshan chakra raised, as you see here, and he was ready to chop him. And Lord Nityananda stopped. Appearance, you don't kill the demons. You don't use weapons. You save them. Please save them. Liberate them. Lord Chaitanya was still angry, kind of like Lord Nrsingadev, after Prahlad had been harassed, and said, they've offended you. Finish them right now, as if they fall at your feet and beg forgiveness. So they understood the severity of the situation, and they fell at Lord Nityananda's feet. They became completely cleansed and freed of all material contamination. From this day forward, never again do these sinful activities, and you take to continuous chanting of the holy name. And this way, your now liberated position will be maintained. Then he turned to the devotees that saw all of this happening and said, you should never criticize Jagai and Madhai for their previous activities. They are now Vaishnavas. And it's your offense if you look at their past. See their situation today and respect them. So the two, Jagai and Madhai, weren't instructed to do this, but they wanted to serve the devotees. So they created a special to the Ganga, Jagai Madhai Ghat, it's called. And they stood on either side, and as people were going to take their bath in the Ganga, with folded palms, they would pray, please forgive us for all of our wicked. May stay fixed in the loving devotional service of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they became celebrated devotees. And one of the lessons that we are to take away from this particular sequence is, if you want to get the mercy of Krishna, how do you get the mercy of Krishna? And how do you get the mercy of Radharani? You get the mercy of Radharani by getting the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. How do you get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Get the mercy of Lord Nityananda. You've earned the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And how do you get the mercy of Lord Nityananda? By approaching the Jagais and Madhais of this world. Assisting Lord Nityananda, you get his mercy. By whose mercy you get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. By whose mercy you get the mercy of Radharani. By whose mercy you get the mercy of... And that's for the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is what we're engaged in. We're assisting Lord Nityananda to assist Lord Chaitanya in bringing the message of Krishna to everyone. And sometimes people aren't going to say thank you. Sometimes people are going to say other things. We perform Sankirtan anyways, because it gains the mercy of Lord Nityananda. We're going to hear more as we proceed this evening. So following this, the child in the whole of Navadvip, and confrontation with Shankasi and so many things. But it grew and grew and grew abundantly. And at a certain stage, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided that he was going to take sannyas. There's some detail which time doesn't permit to go into, who was very distressed to hear this, not just for himself. How will Mother Sachi maintain her life? She has nothing. You're the only thing left. Her daughters have died. Her son took sannyas. Her husband departed this world. You're all she has left. And if you leave, how will she maintain herself? And all the associates, they're totally attached to you. How will they maintain themselves? But he didn't say no, because he can't tell his Lord and Master no. So Lord Chaitanya had a purpose, and he fulfilled the purpose by taking sannyas. He went to Katwa, where this painting shows Keshava Bharati is giving him the sannyas mantras. And present there were Nityananda, Gadadhar, who we're going to hear about. No, we heard about him yesterday. Gadadhar Das, not Gadadhar Pandit. They're two different personalities. He actually had his residence in Katwa after this. Mukunda, the singer, and several others were present. Just 5 others were present. And at the bottom of the painting, you see the barber, a celebrated person. Actually, today in Katwa, there's a samadhi for Madhu the barber. And along with Madhu the barber's samadhi is the samadhi of Lord Chaitanya's hair. But they locked it up because people were breaking in and trying to steal hair. It's a really elaborate description of Madhu's trembling. He was too afraid that the hair of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was glorified over and over. But he finally did it. And then the Sannyas Initiation took place. And as you know, Nityananda tricked Lord Chaitanya because he wanted to go to Vrindavan, but he was in a state of such madness, he didn't know where he was. Instead, he tricked him and sent him to the house of Shari in Shantipur. There he stayed for a week, where Mother Sachi cooked for him, made the request that instead of going to Vrindavan, go to Puri. Krishna is also there. So the same entourage, 5, 6, Lord Chaitanya, on their way to Jagannath Puri. And on the way to Jagannath Puri, the description that's found in Chaitanya Bhagavat is Jagatananda Pandit is Danda. And Lord Chaitanya's Danda was given to Lord Nityananda to hold while Jagatananda went to collect alms. And when Lord Chaitanya went across the river, you see the name of the Suvarnareka River, to see some temples that were on the other side. And Lord Nityananda had this very intense conversation with the Danda. Who do you think you are? My Lord is the personality of Godhead. He doesn't need any austerities carrying a Danda and Kamandalu. So he broke the Danda in 3 pieces and threw the Danda in the river. And Lord Chaitanya was in a state of ecstasy. He didn't recognize all of this until they reached the place where you see in the next Hemanath temple. And it's from on this side of the Ataranala Bridge, a celebrated place that's still there. 13 arches underneath the bridge. So people could travel over the river to Nala Bridge. He came to external consciousness and requested Lord Nityananda for his danda. And there was a little discussion yesterday evening about this pastime. One of the ways it's described is Lord Nityananda told a little lie. He said, oh, you're swooned in ecstasy and you fell in the danda and it broke in 3 places. In Chaitanya Bhagavat, it says, Lord Chaitanya said, where's my danda? And Jagadananda said, Nityananda broke it. And Lord Chaitanya confronted Nityananda and said, why did you break it? And his reply, I broke only a piece of bamboo. If you cannot forgive me, then punish me appropriately. So in this case, in this Chaitanya Bhagavat version, he didn't lie. He just said it was just a bamboo. And Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya said it's not just bamboo. The danda of a sannyasi represents the submission to the personality of Godhead. And all the spiritual potency is resting within that danda. You've broken it. As a sannyasi, that's my only possession. So I don't want to travel with you anymore. So you can go ahead and go to Puri, I'll stay behind and come later. Or I'll go and you stay behind because I don't want to travel with you anymore. This was a pastime for the purpose of Lord Chaitanya entering before the Jagannath deity and swooning in ecstasy and everything else. And after Lord Chaitanya entered the temple and was taken away by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to his home, later when Lord Nityananda, there's a description, he also went straight for the altar and he embraced Lord Jagannath. The pujaris were a little disturbed, but he was in a spontaneous mood of loving devotion. Lord Nityananda with Lord Chaitanya's devotees, and he would take all evening, where in Panihati, you see prostrated before Lord Nityananda is Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami became one of the greatest devotees of Lord Chaitanya, but he was unable to get away from the material entanglements of his life. He was son of one of the most wealthy persons in the whole country, but he had no interest in the wealth of his father. He had interest only in Lord Chaitanya, and try this and try that and try the other thing. He couldn't get away. So finally he went to Lord Nityananda and begged Lord Nityananda, please give your blessings, because otherwise how will I get, if I get your blessings, I may get the association of Lord Chaitanya. That's a wonderful pastime. He engaged in creating a festival, the Chipped Rice and Yogurt Festival at Panihati. In our Atlanta temple, it's called New Panihati. They have that festival every year. It's a nice festival. And he fell at his feet and petitioned Nitya to get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So you see he's placing his foot on his head and blessed him very soon. The day will come when you will get Lord Chaitanya's association. And in the birthplace, well, in Shantipur, where Advaitacharya spent most of his life, there's a place where the 3 lords would have lunch together, and they would plan activities for the Sankirtan movement. Now, this is the painting with Lord Chaitanya with a shaven head and Nityananda with his back to us and Advaitacharya. But so in this pastime, it may have taken place in Puri, not in Shantipur, but the 2 lords were invited to Advaitacharya's home for lunch. and he served them lunch, and a funny pastime took place, particularly with Lord Nityananda. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in the mood and the pastime of a sannyasi or renunciate. So with such a large portion of food, Lord Chaitanya asked for an empty banana leaf plate so he could remove. That was a practice. And Advaitacharya objected and said, you're the Supreme Lord. You eat 56 times a day in Jagannath Puri. So what are you saying this is too much? So just stop complaining. And Nityananda took the opposite. He said, you've hardly brought anything. I'm really hungry. So what kind of host are you? What kind of Brahmana? What kind of, you invite guests to your home, you give them nothing? And they started a conversation back and forth where they were insulting one another in a loving mood, not the other kind. And so he said, you stop complaining. You're lucky you're getting anything. Who even knows what your caste is? So just take your meal and be content. So Lord Nityananda took a palmful of rice, threw it on the floor in anger. Some grains of rice bounced from the floor, hit Advaitacharya in the leg, and he started dancing, as you see. Then celebrated pastime with the three lords. Funny activities. At a certain point in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Jagannath Puri, he requested Nityananda to return to Bengal, and two things. He said, my mother has asked me to stay here. And so, but I've come into this world to distribute the holy name far and wide. So you please do this on my behalf. As you see in the background, that's the dome of the Jagannath temple. So he made two requests. You take some of my associates, they'll travel with you, and you give the holy name to anyone, everyone, throughout the whole land. And Lord Nityananda did that. And he also made a request of Nityananda that you please become married. And Nityananda was very unhappy. He said, you're sending me away from me. And not only that, mostly your associates are renunciates, and you want me to get married. So have I done something to offend you? And Lord Chaitanya smiled and said, no, I just see you that way. So he went back, and we heard yesterday evening some of the ecstatic activities of the Sankirtan party of Lord Nityananda and his associates, traveling here and there, infusing everybody with ecstatic love for Krishna. In Ambika Kalna, he accepted marriage to the two daughters of Suryadas Sarakale, and they're illustrated here, Vasudha and Janava. Now, we hear much more about Janava than Vasudha, but they're sisters. And after marriage, the Lord Nityananda made his residence. Now, there's two ways that his place of residence are spelled. And Kardaha is one of the ways it's spelled, and Kadadaha is more common. But in any case, that was the headquarters where Lord Nityananda and his two wives remained. After some time, according to Nityananda Charitamrita, Lord Nityananda went with Janava and Vasudha to Ekachakra, and he entered the temple of Ekachakra and disappeared into the deity, the temple of Banka Roy, that same deity that he had as a small child. After Nityananda's disappearance, later there's the pastime of Nityananda had disappeared after Lord Chaitanya disappeared. So both lords had left this world, their pastimes. And Narottam Das Thakur, who was trained by Jiva Goswami in the scriptures, and initiated by Lokanath Maharaj. He, Narottam Das Thakur, was given an assignment by Lokanath. Go back to your home, because his father, Narottam, will hear some more tomorrow morning, because about Narottam Das Thakur. Narottam Das Thakur was the son of a king. So his father and his uncle were celebrated personalities. Go back to that same place and preach Krishna consciousness. He gave him a special assignment of establishing 6 deities in a temple. So there was a big festival in Kituri, celebrated pastime in Kituri, where devotees from all over the land came. And these are the names of the 6 deities. And during the Srinivasachari was the chief priest, installing all 6 of these deities. And there was a big cast of invited guests and intense kirtan. And in that intense kirtan, as this painting shows, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda appeared for everyone to see. Now, they had already left their manifest pastimes, but the kirtan was so ecstatic, and the association of devotees so ecstatic, that they appeared and danced in the assembly for everyone to see. After that event, in the whole Vaishnava community, Narottam became a very celebrated Vaishnava. Again, we'll hear about that tomorrow. Now, in the morning class, there was a question. Do you have photos of the deities? I was able to find one. Were you able to find? You have? Okay, we'll show it tomorrow. Vallabhikanta. This is one of the deities. As you see, here's the names. Vallabhikanta is the second name. Brajamohan is the third name. So here's Radha Brajamohan. And connected, one, of course, at the top of the list is Gauranga. These are the 6 deities where Lord Nityananda appeared and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. We'll discuss a bit tomorrow. But for tomorrow's morning class, there was a Brahmana named Vipra Das who had a deity of Mahaprabhu and Vishnu Priya in a grain storage room. But no one would go in there because there was a very poisonous cobra, very dangerous cobra. But Narottam went right in, and the cobra left, and the deities, it's described in Narottam Vilas, the deities of Mahaprabhu and Vishnu Priya sat in his lap. Anyway, Narottam Das will hear some more tomorrow. All glories to Lord Nityananda, the dearmost associate of Sri Gauranga. No one is equal to you in the 3 worlds. You're the reservoir of transcendental bliss who bestows prema bhakti for Mahaprabhu. Those who serve you achieve pure devotional service. O Lord, you delivered all the fallen souls, forgiving their grave offenses. Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Sri Nityananda are the 2 matchless lords who appeared for the good fortune of this world. So these 2, we worship Gaurnitai commonly in our temples. And here is a little message from Narottam Das Thakur on the 2 lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. This is Nitai Padakamala, is a celebrated song. Narottam Das Thakur spread the glories of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda primarily through song, in a certain style and a certain manner of presentation. The lotus feet of Lord Nityananda are a shelter where one will get the soothing moonlight, not only of one, but of millions of moons. If the world wants to have real peace, it should take shelter of Lord Nityananda. Thus one takes shelter. Under the shade of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, it will be very difficult for him to approach Radha Krishna. If one actually wants to enter into the dancing party of Radha Krishna, he must firmly catch hold of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. So it's a celebrated song, Nitai Pada Kamala. Koti Chandra Shushitala. He's one of many glorifiers of Lord Nityananda and Lord Nityananda's lotus feet. Now, just today, someone posted this little video of Nityanandastaka by Vrindavan Das Thakur. And if everything works right, we'll be able to play it.
Sarat Chandra Bhrantim Spuradamalakantim Gajagatim.
Oh.
Hari Premonmattam Dhrita Paramasattvam Smitamukham Sada Ghurnam Netram Karakalita Vetram Kalibhidam Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajana Tarukandam Niravadhi Rasanamagaram Svajanagana Sarvasvamatulam Tadiyeka Prana Pramita Vasudha Jahnavapatim Sada Premonmadam Paramaviditam Mandamanasa Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajana Tarukandam Niravadhi Sachi Suno Preshtham Nikhila Jagadishtam Sukhamayam Kalau Majjajjivo Dharana Karano Dama Karunam Hare Rakyanada Bhava Jaladhi Garbo Natiharam Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajana Tarukandam Niravadhi Aye Bhratarnirnam Kalikalushinam Kinnu Bhavita Tatha Prayaschittam Rachaya Yadanaya Sataime Vrajanti Tvamitham Saha Bhagavata Mantrayati Yo Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajana Tarukandam Niravadhi Yatheshtam re bhratah Guru Hari Haridhani Manisham Tato Vasamsaram Buddhi Taranadayo Mayi Laget Idam Bahu Spotair Atatiratayan Yapratigriham Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajana Tarukandam Niravadhi Balat Samsarambo Nidhiharana Kumbhodbhamaho Satam Shreyasindhu Nati Kumudabandhum समुदितं खलश्रेणी स्फूर्जात् तिमिरहरसूर्यप्रभामहम् भजे नित्यानन्दम् भजनतरुकन्दं निरवधि नटन्तं गायन्तं हरिमनुवदन्तं पथि पथि व्रजन्तं पश्यन्तं स्वमपि नदयन्तं जनगणम् प्रकुर्वन्तं सन्तं सकरुणदृगन्तं प्रकलनात् भजे नित्यानन्दं भजनतरुकन्दं निरवधि सुबिभ्राणं भ्रातु करसरसिजं कोमलतरम् मिथो वक्त्रालोकोच्छलितपरमानन्दहृदयम् भ्रमन्तं माधुर्यैरहमदयन्तं पुरजनान् भजे नित्यानन्दं भजनतरुकन्दं निरवधि रसानामाधारं रसिकवरसद्वैष्णवधनं रसागारं सारं पठितततितारं स्मरणतः परं नित्यानन्दाष्टकमिदमपूर्वं पठति यस् तदङ्घ्रिद्वन्द्वाब्जं स्फुरतु नितरां तस्य हृदये तदङ्घ्रिद्वन्द्वाब्जं स्फुरतु नितरां तस्य हृदये
Stay there, there's more. So very sweet. And who knows Nityananda better than Sri Vrindavan Das Thakur? Now, in ISKCON, there are an abundance of Gaura-Nitai deities along with other Radhakrishna deities or Jagannath deities, but in homes, many devotees in their homes have Gaura-Nitai deities. I thought I would share with you this final little message. Srila Prabhupada, in his preaching work, emphasized sadhana bhakti. Institutions and organizations are meant for that, propagating Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. And during one visit in Caracas, you see the date here, deities of Gaura-Nitai were installed. They have a funny way of spelling. Shri Shri Parama Karuna Gaura Nitai. Maybe Subal has seen these deities. You can send in some little message to the chat message if you have. And when Prabhupada was installing the deities and speaking to the devotees, he became choked up and was unable to continue speaking. He was addressing the audience saying, in this very remote place on the planet Earth, I mean, these aren't his words, but the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda have come. And they've come before you to receive your love and your service and your worship. They're the most merciful lords. And he became choked up and couldn't continue speaking. Now in bhakti, you can say that the goal is to become situated so deeply in your loving service to Radha and Krishna that you become overcome with transcendental emotion or cry for Krishna. So Prabhupada did like that. This was February 18th, 1975. 11 days later, he's in Atlanta, and just arriving in the temple, he started speaking, seeing the Gaura deities on the altar. And I'm going to play a little recording of a really short speech.
God, thank you. So I'm very glad to see you and coming first of all Mexico City. Yes. So Mexico City, then Caracas, then Miami. I see your temple is the best. Yeah. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very kind. Parama Karuna Pahudri Jana. Two lords, Nitai Gaura Chandra, Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They are very kind. They appear just to reclaim the fallen souls of this age. So they are more kind than Krishna. Krishna is also very kind. He comes to deliver, but Krishna demands first of all surrender. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not demand surrender. He's so kind. So take shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and be happy. Thank you.
I don't have a recording of what Prabhupada said. There's a record in the Lamrita of what Prabhupada said in Caracas, and it was very similar. When we see Gaura deities, like this photograph of the deities in Atlanta, Prabhupada wasn't just seeing a brass form of Gaura. He was seeing the merciful Gauranga and Nityananda making themselves available for fallen souls in this world to receive their mercy. Now, his external mood was delivering the Sankharshan movement's message to the world, Prabhupada. And internally, we can understand a very intimate associate. His internal workings normally were not shown to the public, but here's two examples where in the merciful manifestation of Gaura, he knew what was going on, just like the merciful manifestation of the holy name and the bhakti process and all of what our lives are intersecting with to transform. This is the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, and his chief assistant was Nityananda Ram. So we're celebrating the appearance day of Nityananda Ram today. Shri Nityananda Ram ki jai. So there's a couple of different audiences, and I think we can take a little bit of time if there's some questions from the audience. Is there some way to do this locally in the room here?
Thank you much.
Take away your mask so I can hear you better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. I was really touched by Prabhupada's talking about the Atlanta temple, and then how, and you explained that Lord Nityananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is there in different part of the world. So I was thinking, what will be the near future in another 10,000 years? Because this morning you spoke about not many people know about Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda anywhere in the India. So I was just meditating on that this morning. And then you see how every house, so many devotees having Gaur Nitai. But my question is, will that be more of the Radha Krishna temples are there? But do we have exclusive only Gaur Nitai install? What I mean to say is Radha Krishna is there, Nityananda, and both all the deities are there. But still people only know Radha Krishna. They may not know Lord Chaitanya, Nityananda, right? So how do we introduce them more and more? Was a question.
On the one hand and on the other hand. On the one hand, a natural strategy for extending Krishna Bhakti to others is to give something that's more familiar rather than something that's less familiar, like Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita doesn't mention Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. It mentions Bhakti principles. So introducing people to the Bhakti life through things that they're somewhat familiar with, and there's certainly principles in Bhagavad Gita that people intuitively understand anyways. So that's an entry point. But then on the other side, to get the full mercy of what Lord Chaitanya came to give, that is Braja Prem, that's very elevated. So deity worship, my response is this. Deity worship comes after some time anyways. Initially, people don't, here's a deity, here's Bhagavad Gita, here's some beads. And as they start to understand that they don't understand fully, they understand more deeply, they need mercy, then at a certain stage, deity worship is very valuable. And when people ask, we encourage Gaur Nitaites, and they have to understand who is Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda. So it happens in sequence. And to get the sequence, to keep the sequence moving, it will take vigorous preaching. We'll say it negatively. Without vigorous preaching, it won't happen. People will stay with Jagannath or Radha Krishna or Sitaram or something that they're familiar with. But the full mercy of Lord Chaitanya's appearance in this world is to give Braja Prem, which is not ordinary. How does one understand Braja Prem? It's not ordinary. Not ordinary. It's the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda. So that's those that have conviction, those have attained something of a more mature stage of bhakti life. They'll want to give Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda understanding and deity forms. But it's going to take strong, mature preaching. Preachers doing the preaching, living the life of bhakti, and recognizing that mercy that's come into their life has come from these two. Going to time. Your question is, over a period of time, will bhakti life continue as it has been since the time of Srila Prabhupada and the following generation? Will that continue? That's a good question. It's a good question. One answer to that question, which is, part of the answer to your question, is people need to read Prabhupada's books. So it's a banner that's being raised and waved. Read Prabhupada's books, read Prabhupada's books. And it's going on. And that needs to continue going on. Because in Prabhupada's books, one will get the importance of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, in a pablamized fashion. And then gradually Chaitanya Charitamrita in a more explicit fashion. So it's going to take the mission to continue to reaching out, and then those who are contacted to read Prabhupada's books carefully. And therefore the current system of reading groups and so forth, increasing book distribution, then reading Prabhupada's books together. That's a very good formula. Because we want people not just to buy the books or visit our temples and see the deities, but read the books. You have to have the books to read the books. Is preaching, extending the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then people will come to know, in short. And it's a many-person task. It's not just, okay, our book distributors, they'll take care of it. And it's a many-person task. Education. How are we doing? Anything else in the room? We're going to go online.
This is from Apurva Anand. I'm losing faith on devotees and their mercy. I often feel the financial condition I cannot be in association. I'm alone completely. What should I do? Please take my questions, I beg you.
Well, loneliness in our modern worldly circumstance is abundant. So sympathy, but there are many in the same boat as yourself. And if you're in a remote place, that's okay. You're able to attend this class. You can do the same thing remotely. There's many, so many. In some cases, too many, because people don't know how to decide how to take advantage of the present day virtual association. No, that doesn't 100% replace physical personal association, but we have to live with the circumstance. So somebody who can guide you, can help you find virtual association and take advantage of that virtual association. And, financial difficulties. There are many persons having financial difficulties in the pandemic time. Some are not, and some are. If you have spiritual shelter from that spiritual well-being, our teaching is true that material well-being will follow. Get spiritually connected at least. And in these pandemic times, that it's different, but it's abundant. Association is abundant.
Amara Mataji's question. Why did both the lords leave this world so early? Advaita Acharya said the riddle and Mahaprabhu wound his pastimes, but were there not more people like Jagai and Madhai? Will they appear again in this Kali Yuga?
Who? Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, or Jagai and Madhai? They will not appear again in this Kali Yuga, but their associates are available and the holy name is there. The advent of Kali Namarupe, the form of the Lord is in the form of his holy name. He came to propagate it, and others are following him, propagating it. So he's present in the form of those who represent him. And he left because that was his pastime. He set the ball in motion and the ball is still rolling. So get on board and be part of the instruments of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, to deliver the holy name and their mercy. That's it. You have something? Oh, right.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yesterday I was talking to my dad and I was like, wondering what like the whole pastimes of Nityananda. I already know a little bit, but I was curious to know more. And we came to a topic of talking about the 4 yugas, like Kali Yuga and so
Yes.
on. And I was wondering what, like, until now we're in Kali Yuga, but what happens after Kali Yuga?
Oh, Satya Yuga again.
Oh, so it's a cycle?
Yes.
Okay.
Here's a visual. You visual person like me? Imagine, and over on the side, you have an eyedropper that has red paint and blue paint. Just give a couple of drops. Red paint, blue paint, and stir. It's no longer white, it's off-white. And you keep adding blue and red, and it gets darker and darker and darker and darker. So it's something like, and it keeps turning and turning, because so the modes of nature add to each other. The mode of goodness is reducing, the mode of ignorance and passion is increasing. And when it gets to the very, very bottom, kind of like a vortex, it just goes around and around and around and shoo. That's the Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga wipes out the whole planet, delivers them, and then it goes back up to the Satya Yuga again, where mode of good is predominant. And, lower qualities, darker, 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 then back up again, quickly, instantly. A little juncture, but quickly. And according to some indications, the Satya Yuga begins by persons who are residing in higher dimensional realms, like Vyasadeva, who Madhvacharya visited in the upper realms, not the worldly, earthly, but where Vyasadeva is with his associates, and they're going to begin Satya Yuga. Everything is finished. They come and present life of purity in sattva, Satya Yuga. Vyasadeva is a Chiranjiva. He's alive. He didn't depart. He's just in another dimension. And he'll descend into this dimension and begin Satya Yuga. Not Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, but Vyas and his associates. The same place where Madhvacharya went. In our disciplic line. Brahma, Narada, Vyas, Madhva. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming to take part in the Nityananda's Appearance Day discussion. And tomorrow we're going to spend some time with Narottam Das Thakur. His appearance? Appearance. That means tomorrow is Purnima. Yes. Tomorrow is Purnima. He appeared on a Purnima. Magh Purnima. The sky was almost Purnima. Nityananda Trayodasi and then Purnima. Shri Nityananda Ram ki jai.